You. Today is Thursday, the 5th of February 2026. My name is Francisco Gaffney, and this is my daily streaming all about governance, risk, compliance, and advisory boards. So far this week, I have covered intellectual property, when capital structure meet strategy or fights against strategy, and footprint resilience. And footprint, remember, was not about going greener, it was about footprint in terms of your locations, your geographies, your warehouses, your distribution networks, etc., etc. But today is about the green transition, but with a twist. I'm talking about I'm not talking about the obvious parts like the fuels or new aircraft efficiencies, etc., etc. I'm talking about the invisible components that quietly holds boards back, which is data, governance, claims discipline, and suppliers' evidence. And suppliers also you have evidence in the downstream and the upstream. So let's take a look at three things to consider when going through the green transition. And number one is UK rules require many large companies to disclose climate-related financial information in their strategic reports. So raising the bar on the evidence and internal control supporting what is reported. And I mentioned large companies, but also is cascading to everybody else. So this is related to you, even if you don't think it is. The second thing is the Competition and Markets Authority Green Claims Code sets out principles for environmental claims. If your communications get ahead of your evidence, actually you're creating a risk. And number three, and I'm going to use or mention a live London Stock Exchange listed company that I'm watching as an example. They say it has carried out a dual materiality analysis and set out sustainability objectives, including a carbon trajectory alignment with the climate goals and a carbon disclosure project climate rating of B. And here's the trap. It's doing the narrative without building the evidence system behind it. So, in other words, imagine a net zero without evidence is like a flight plan without instruments. So you can point the nose to the right direction and still miss the runway. Not even the destination, the wrong way. So you can really take off in that claims or that narrative. Now, most of your footprint is not in, I'm not talking about distribution warehouses, networks, etc. Footprint in the going greener is not in your office electricity use, by the way. It's in the materials, sub-tier suppliers, and program choices. And most of your risk is not in your intent, it's in your ability to prove, meaning provide the evidence consistently to what has changed. The policy is also is getting very specific in terms of the regulators. For example, the UK Sustainability Aviation Fuel Mandates sets out a trajectory that started last year, 2025, and scales over time. That kind of policy becomes a commercial requirement upstream. So customers start asking for evidence, not slogan. So the upstream is your customer, the people that you supply, and downstream is the people who supplies you. Now, as a board advisor, what I would propose to consider in these cases? Number one is build a claims and evidence chain. Use the Green Claims Code as a checklist. You already have a checklist there. So what are we claiming? What is the boundary? What is the evidence? And who signs this off? Number two, treat reporting as a control system, not as a document. So boards should ask, where is the data coming from? Who is it? Who validates this? And what could cause it to be wrong, right? And number three, another guidance is very useful. So use the Advertising Standards Authority and the Committee of Advertising Practices guidance as a reality check. Not environmental claim goes out without a named evidence owner and a retrievable source file, right? So you have to say, this is an environmental plan, this is our team doing this is the data that we provide and to support our evidence, and this is where it's stored, right? So let's put this in a board language, if you may. If the board wants to accelerate the green transition, stop starting with what do we want to say Instead, ask this question: what can we prove? What evidence can we show, right? And for this is a very four steps or four invisible assets that make this difference. Assets I mentioned because you already have that. Probably you already have that. It's not organized in a way that actually can be easily demonstrated. Number one is data systems that track emissions and drivers. And drivers is not a chauffeur, is the system and processes of these data systems. Number two is a supplier engagement that gets upstream evidence. I mean, actually, how you provide this evidence. Number three is a governance that stops overclaiming. So don't start to say things without having a very, very body of evidence and processes and systems that demonstrates that. And number four is a commercial discipline that links sustainability work to customer value and program decisions. And if you have all these four, pretty much you just put it together in a very well-structured process to communicate that to the public. Three red flags that tell you the system is missing, right? So if you don't have any of these, probably you have to reconsider again. So number one, targets without a clear baseline. You have to have a clear baseline, so then you can build on top of that all the other four steps. Number two, claims without a boundary. So actually, yeah, we are all green. That there's no boundary there. It's very hard to prove. And number three, supplier numbers that are best guess without no method attached, meaning that actually, remember that we mentioned upstream and downstream. So if your suppliers are providing you a very weak report or very weak communication in terms how they are how they are treating these things, so your whole narrative also when this is the evidence is asked, and I say, let's start from the suppliers, and you go with these very, very weak reports, then you have a problem there. So it's a red flag. So a simple structure that helps is 6 steps. What is a claim? What is a boundary? What is the data? How you do give assurance? Who signs off? And where is it stored? And data and storage are key because you cannot have binders on emails and in people's heads, on checklists, on clipboards, or in different locations, different places. You have to have the data and stored in one place or in one location where you can retrieve this information and actually analyze it, so produce a better report. So if any one of these is missing, that could be, it's not that you don't have a claim. It means that a claim is fragile. It's very weak. So the other shift boards needs to make is connecting sustainability to money and delivery. So if a program change reduces scrap, for example, or waste, what is the energy use or the rework, and treat it as an operational improvement with a climate upside. So you can market these reduce of scrap or waste or efficiencies and say, hey, we are doing right. Look, this is what we did, what we changed, how we did it. This is evidence, and voila, here's in our report. We are doing well. If a supplier cannot provide, remember downstreams, if a supplier cannot provide credible evidence, treat it as a delivery and a reputational risk, because you cannot be, that will probably be one of the weakest points on your supply. We mentioned this in the 3 red flags. Anyway, so the third thing that I want to mention is if disclosures are built on estimates that no one can explain, treat it as a governance gap, not a communication issue. So you have to explain what you're communicating and provide the evidence. Why does this approach to green transition matters? So it's for 3 things: the outcomes, the differentiators, and the risk reductions. In terms of outcomes, you use the assets lens to turn sustainability into board-ready assets, the evidence chains, supply data routines, and a disclosure plan that links to commercial decisions. In terms of differentiator, you designed the work around the UK expectations on disclosures and claims. So you reduce the gap between what you say, what you file, and what you can defend. And remember, I said UK because I'm more familiar with this environment, though this is easily related to any other geography and regulator in any country. And in terms of risk reduction, you pressure test public statements against the competition markets authorities the Advertising Standards Authority, and the Committee on Advertising Practice Standards. So your green transition narrative does not become a compliance problem. So one thing that you can do today, very easy, less than 30 minutes. Take one sustainability claim that you're making or your company is making publicly and write down the evidence you will show to a regulator to prove it. And then do the next, and then do the next. And then you will start to see if all these things these processes and systems are in the right place, the storage, the data, the boundaries, and the signs off. So let's pause it here for today and reconvene tomorrow. Because if you remember yesterday, I mentioned the footprint resilience, and I'm talking about footprint resilience. No, it's not the footprint going greener, it's the warehouses, the factories, the depots, the supplier network, the digital assets, etc. And today we covered evidence and claims in terms of going greener. And tomorrow I will show you how to build a disruptive technology portfolio without a hype. Nice. So if you are a UK board member, non-executive director, or sitting in the C-suite of a company, and you want a green evidence chain, set up a 30-minute call so I can understand your position and how an independent international advisory board looking from the outside into your company. So you have a very, very large cognitive diversity here that can help you and your team without stepping on your toes, without a traditional consulting overhead, and without a public theater. Right. So have a great day.